Hi guys, NGK Guy here. This video is about fitting a aftermarket coil to the Rusi 250. To actually access your coil, which is mounted here, you have to remove the complete side fairing from the bike. That entails removing your seat, this side panel, unscrewing several mounts, also removing your dash and unscrewing 3 Phillips head screws here so that you can actually remove that side panel piece. That will give you this access to this side of the motor. The coil is mounted here. This is the original coil. I bought 2 coils excuse me, to test on the bike. This one here is a Modi 5, which is supposed to be a high performance coil, and the second coil I bought is the Faito Terawatt. I bought this Terawatt coil and I fitted it to my wife's Rusi 125, and she said that the performance difference was very noticeable. So I bought this after I bought this, but that's useful because I want to show you a spark comparison between standard Mobi Faito. In terms of these 2 aftermarket coils, the Mobi is a bigger coil than the Terawatt. Very briefly, how coils work is inside here. This is laminated steel that mounts to the body of the vehicle. Inside this, around this laminated steel, is a coil of thick copper wire. Outside of that is a coil of many layers of very thin copper wire. What happens is when your motor fires, it sends a pulse through this wire here to the coil. That builds up an electromagnetic field with the primary winding, which is the thick wires. But when that pulse stops, under a law called Faraday's law, and you can research it and it's very complex, what it does is it induces an electrical force in the outside coil. Now, we all know electricity likes to go to ground. You've seen lightning, what does it do? It strikes ground. So there is now power built up in this coil and it has to go somewhere. This is the wire that it goes from and leads to your spark plug. So as your motor is turning, it's pulsing and sending electronic impulses to this coil, which responds by creating electricity, a massive amount of electricity, which is then transmitted to your coil, to your spark plug, sorry. Theoretically, the bigger the coil, you can assume that there's many more secondary windings, and so maybe it's going to produce a much bigger spark. That's why I bought this coil. When you look at the Terawatt, it's smaller, and I thought maybe it's not going to be as powerful. However, I'll connect all 3 up and show you a spark test. So this is the standard Rusi coil. And this one is the Modi 5. You might have noticed that to even get a spark from this coil, I had to hold it very close to ground here. The original coil is actually much more powerful than this. So first off, I certainly wouldn't recommend buying this based on this test. Faito Terawatt, it doesn't have the 2 wire connectors like the Modi 5 and the original coil. What it relies on is mounting the coil to the frame to earth it. The problem with that for me is that if you have a poor mount to the earth, wherever it is you may mount it, and particularly in Philippine weather, you can get rust build up between where the coil is mounted to the frame, therefore you're not going to get a very good earth connection. So I'd strongly suggest you make something like this. It's just a male plug for the earth connection. That fits in there. And then when you mount your coil to the frame, you connect it. So you're completing the circuit that was intended for the coil for this motorcycle. It's very easy just to mock something up like that, but you can then be guaranteed that you have a very good earth connection as long as you have this mounted tightly to the frame. Okay, I'll now mount it to the frame and show you the spark from this coil. Faito Terawatt now hooked up, ready to go. As you can see, a very bright, clean spark from a reasonable distance. So for me, this coil seems to perform much better than the other two. So my basic recommendation is, this is probably going to be a pretty good coil. This is what I'm going to fit to this bike. The next thing I'm going to fit to the machine is an Iridium plug. This is my original plug. It's just the standard D80A NGK plug. As you can see, actually my bike's been running a little bit rich, but I'm not going to bother with adjusting the carburetor, since my next video will be about replacing the carb with the flat-sided carburetor that I've bought, and aftermarket sports air filter. But that's a good indication of a bike that's running too rich. Standard plug, this is the Iridium. If you have a look at the center electrodes, this one is quite thick, maybe 2 mil, whereas this one here is 0.6 of a mil. And that's the Iridium part of the plug. It's not the entire plug, it's just the tip of the central electrode. The Iridium plug, why they use Iridium is because it's very, very durable and it creates a very good, clean spark. So it has a better chance of burning your fuel more efficiently. One of the pros about the Iridium is that it is an efficient burner, much easier for starting your bike. You'll find actually if you fit one of these plugs with your standard ignition system, your bike might even idle a little bit higher because it's burning more efficiently. When you buy one though and fit it, do not try to adjust the gap, because if you put anything in between that little tiny 0.6 of a mil brittle electrode and try to bend it to fit a feeler blade, you're going to waste like 600 pesos, because you'll break that off and that plug will not work. So out of the box is how you put it in your bike. Do not try to adjust it. Okay guys, I've fitted Iridium plugs to my Aprilia 750, and I did notice a nicer, smoother run when I was riding down the highway. So I'm pretty happy with them. That's why I bought it for this bike as well. If you're going to improve your ignition firing by buying an aftermarket high performance coil, using a standard plug really kind of defeats the purpose. So you really need a nice combination of performance parts to get things performing the way you would like them to do. The bike's assembled now. I've put it all back together. I mounted the coil on the original mount using a little angled bracket. Now earlier in the video I talked about making a little earth strap, and if you paid attention you would have seen that I actually plugged it into the active wire. When you're installing this coil, make sure if you do make that earth strap that you connect it to the green wire, not the black striped wire, because that's your positive lead and you're going to short out your coil and have no spark. So just make sure you do that. I'm going to take the bike for a ride now, and when I come back I'll tell you whether I've noticed any difference in performance at all. Well, I just took it for a very short ride, so I can only give you a very brief feedback. I did notice a little bit more throttle response, and it did seem to run quite well, quite smoothly as I went through the gears. I took it pretty high up in the rev range and there was no missing, so it seems to be quite a good little addition to the bike. Certainly will probably be more beneficial once I've fitted the flat slide carburetor and the sports air filter, which will be my next improvement for this machine. Okay, that's it for now guys. Take care, ride safe.